There we go.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone, to the afternoon session. My name is Dr. Roman Ayala. Today, I will be introducing and welcoming Dr. Cathy Bodine. I would like to give a little introduction so that she has a warm welcome. And lucky for us, she's in the room with us too. So Dr. Cathy Bodine is a Coleman Turner Endowed Chair in Cognitive Disability, Executive Director of Kalman Institute for Cognitive Technologies, Associate Professor, Department of Bioengineering, College of Engineering, Design, and Computing, University of Colorado, with various appointments in the departments of Physical Medicine and Rehab, Orthopedics and Pediatrics, CU School of Medicine, Anschutz Medical Campus. She directs the Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering with a focus on assistive medical and accessible mainstream technologies, interdisciplinary research and translational applications and design innovations. She is Director, Innovation Ecosystem, Colorado Clinical Translational Science Institute, University of Colorado, Anschutz Medical Campus, and is developing transdisciplinary educational programs in the Department of Bioengineering focused on inclusive technology, disability, and aging. Welcome, Dr. Bodine.
Thank you, Roman, so much. And thank you for taking time to spend with me this afternoon. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to talk about something today that I'm really passionate about and something that I care very much about. And that is that whole notion of how do we, as academic researchers, scientists, clinicians, etc., how do we transform our ideas and get them out to the marketplace or in a position so that you can actually impact patient outcomes and patient health care. So that's our focus for today. And what I'm going to share with you are some existing and some new resources that are coming your way. We have a small group in the room, but just out of curiosity for those that are here, if any of you and those of you on Zoom, let's see if I can see a second. How many of you have had an idea that you wanted to take to market or have taken an idea to market? Anyone? Okay, so that's too bad because my guess is you've had some really good ideas. And unfortunately, we didn't learn. I don't know about you, but no one in college taught me how to get a product to market. I was learning anatomy and physiology and all this other stuff when I was in college. So what we're going to do today is talk about our Innovators Ecosystem of Colorado. And that is a new buzz phrase that has to do with the Colorado Clinical Translational Sciences Institute. And I will explain that as we go forward. So basically, I did work in industry many years ago before I came to the university, and I also maintained those relationships over the years. So worked with big companies like IBM, Google, et cetera, all the way down to very small, what we call mom and pop organizations. And I've maintained those industry relationships throughout and have worked to develop products along the way and to provide input into new product design or changes in existing products. And what that's led me to know is that some of the most amazing people in the world are right here on this campus and in this region. And so many of us will be, maybe we're having a glass of wine and we're talking with our friends and we say, you know, I really would like to do blah, or if we only had this. Those ideas deserve to be heard, and if possible, they deserve to be placed out in the market. So let's talk a little bit about that. What I'm going to talk about today, there we go, is what happens to faculty innovators and academic innovators writ large. This can be, maybe it's a grad student, maybe it's a staff assistant who has a good idea. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, but I believe there is kind of a double valley of death for academic entrepreneurs. And if you haven't seen this diagram, this is a kind of a historical diagram that talks about what happens to people that are trying to innovate and get a product to market. And typically, if you look at the black curve, You come along with your research, your development, your prototyping, your product launch, all these good things are happening, but then you get to this point where you need money to really succeed. And that's called the valley of death, because that's where most startups fail in the commercial sector. I believe that for academic entrepreneurs, that we have two of those valleys. And the first valley, frankly, comes, we get a grant, we invent something, we do something spectacular, and we publish a paper, and then it goes on the shelf. And that's the first valley of death, because most of us have no clue what to do with it beyond what we were trained to do. And so that makes it really challenging to actually get something that we've come up with out there into the marketplace. I don't know if this resonates with any of you, but it certainly does with me. We've had some really good ideas that we just couldn't get out the door, and we didn't know how. So I want you to kind of keep that in mind, because what I'm going to talk about today are all kinds of new resources that are coming your way, some existing resources that we already have here that you may or may not know about. And that is designed not only to get you through this first valley of death, which I think actually is almost more difficult for academic entrepreneurs, and on to where we can at least have that shot at the second valley of death. So let's see what we can do with that. Okay. So let me explain a little bit. For those of you that may not be familiar with the Colorado Clinical Translational Sciences Institute, this was originated here at the CU Anschutz campus in 2008, when Ron Sokol, who is the principal investigator, received the first Clinical Translational Sciences Award from the National Institutes of Health. This was, again, back in 2008. We have iterated over the years and grown over the years. And right the month before COVID started, I was hired to direct the innovation ecosystem. We're going to talk about what that is. But the CCTSI just went up for renewal. In fact, we submitted all of our proposals a week ago Friday. I think it was just last Friday. My brain got a little warped during that process. But needless to say, NIH in its infinite wisdom decided to break the CCTSI renewal up. Instead of one big grant going in, we submitted 6. And the one that is over here on the right-hand side that says Innovation Ecosystem RC2-2, that is the proposal that we submitted. Now, the way this works is, assuming the CCTSI is renewed, which we're pretty sure it will be, we have some amazing people here on this campus working on it. They will be reviewing these 2 green grants, the Child Maternal Health Research with Terry Hernandez, Dr. Terry Hernandez, and then ours, the Innovation Ecosystem, to go along with this CCTSI resources. So this is an early look at where we're going next. But let's talk about this and what's happening within our innovation ecosystem right now. Our goal, no matter what, and this is in the new proposal and is in our existing work, is to positively impact patient health outcomes by removing roadblocks to innovation and entrepreneurial activities, particularly for women and underrepresented minorities, that improve the effectiveness of clinical translation. And we're going to talk quite a bit about the influence and impact of why is it that women and underrepresented minorities don't always succeed in this entrepreneurial space as a piece of the puzzle. So I want to always share my gratitude and thanks to this amazing team that I work with. And so the folks involved in this work with me are Dr. Michael Holers, who is the Director of Faculty Ventures at CU Innovations. Dr. Holers is a serial entrepreneur and an MD. He's an amazing guy. Gali Bauer, many of you may know him. He directs investments and is the co-director of Spark. Tom Yeager heads up our OIT, and he's going to be very instrumental in a project that we're already working on, and I'm going to share with you for resources in just a second. Dr. Regina Richards and Dr. Laura Borgelt are working with me to form some affinity groups we'll talk more about. My able assistant who's in the room, Dr. Demetria McNeil, is also my right hand on so many things, but in particular, she does a fantastic job with our I-Core. And again, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Mary Kay is our assistant. Wendy Meyer is the one who's always sending you emails across campus regarding all the fun activities we do. Also work very closely with Colorado State University, Dr. Sarah Hibbs Ship, who is the managing director basically within their tech transfer office. and Emily Klein, who is the Director of Venture Development at CU Boulder. Dan Holtrop, many of you know him. He is our program assistant who helps to set up our research studios for CCTSI, as well as our I-Corps program. We'll talk more about him. And then Goldie Komai, Dr. Komai is our program evaluator. So that gives you an idea of my team. I don't want to take all the credit here. I want to make sure everyone knows that I have a massive village of amazing people who I am pleased to work with. So let's talk about why we don't innovate. These are statistics most recently available. And so basically, when you look at gender and you think about who applies for a patent and who gets named on a patent, the latest data from 2017 published by the US Patent Office tells us that women were involved in 12.7% of new patent applications in 2017. That's not very many, is it? And if you look at the breakdown, what you see is mostly white Caucasian males, 86.5%, and then you see even smaller proportions of various folks who are involved in patents. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that is in just a minute. The other thing that's really interesting is academic STEM career progression by gender and race. And this was from 2015, and I haven't seen the most recent data yet, but I will be pulling that up. The point I want to make is when it comes to becoming a full professor, 80% of men become full professors, while only 18% of women become full professors. And the numbers drop even more when you look at race representation, underrepresented groups, and when you think about the various degrees and leadership that are potentially available. Interesting, isn't it? Well, why is that? And this has been something that has really, really bothered me for a long time. And so there's actually a fast growing body of literature on these pieces. But I prefer to think about all of my female friends here on campus. Let's just talk about that. And literally, what happens for most women in STEM who want to be an innovator, life kind of gets in the way. So for example, about the time, and there's lots of fancy literature to back this, but basically about the time you get through med school or you get through a PhD program or some other type of advanced qualifying career, well, then you may decide you'd like to start a family. And those are primary childbearing years for women in particular. Also, many women have these dual sandwich roles of taking care of their parents, family members, etc. And so what happens is you have to make choices. And let's go back over to this promotions graphic here. And what you see in this is very few women really moving forward. Well, there's a problem there because again, it hits all of our career progression hits on those years when we've got a lot on our plate, right? And so that's a problem because we're losing brilliant ideas. We know our, and what I love, for example, in my department of bioengineering, 52% of our students are women. And so that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Let's see what we can do with this. So these are things to really think about and to think about why. So I've talked and done, I did a lot of interviews over the last couple of years on Zoom, of course, to figure out what's going on with people. And sure enough, it turns out we do follow the literature. The literature is reporting accurately. For underrepresented minorities and for women in general, there's a lot of implicit bias that still exists today. And so we always feel like we have to work twice as hard in order to get to the same place as someone else. So when you're working twice as hard, you potentially have family at home or you have other issues to deal with, life happens, then it makes it really hard to choose what you can do. Do you go for promotion? And if so, that means publications, that means getting grants, that means doing all those things we're all familiar with, and giving up perhaps on innovation, on your great idea, right? So it can make it very challenging. Now, it's not easy for men either. I don't mean to be disparaging at all in that case, but there's a little bit wider bandwidth because, as we know also from the literature and from life, women do take up most of the hours of work at home. And so that does create a difference there, an opportunity. So that's the national average. This is what we see in CU. This is from CU Innovations. This was just completed less than a year ago, from May, well, actually a year now, May of 21. And as you can see from these charts, our results here on campus pretty much reflect what's going on nationally in terms of numbers and inventor demographics. So way fewer females, underrepresented minorities, less, and when you look at the breakdown. And so as you see, we've got some work to do, and that is exactly what we're doing. And I'm excited to talk to you about all of these things. But then when you talk to the big group writ large, when you stop breaking it down and you start talking to anyone who's got an idea, which would probably be all of us, right? What we say is, what we learn, and I heard this many, many times in my interviews, is that innovators from all these groups report not knowing where to go with an idea, how to get help trying to navigate this entrepreneurial pathway. It's not easy. And again, as I said at the beginning, we didn't learn this in college either. So it's a problem. What do you do? And your motivation to dig through this stuff is directly impacted by race, ethnicity, and gender. It just is. And so how can we break these barriers? Because this needs to change. So I'm going to talk about some projects that we're working on now and some that are coming very soon. And so these are the specific aims from the proposal I just submitted, but it's work that is ongoing. And so our specific aim one, we want to remove, I've broken innovators into 3 stages. There's early stage, the aha, I have an idea and I think it's pretty good. My results in my lab or in the clinic, this looks like it could work. That early stage innovator where you just have that germ thought of an idea and you want to know what to do with it. Then there is the mid stage, which is, okay, I've taken my idea, maybe now I have a prototype. And then finally the mid stage to launch. And that third level launch are people that are looking to start a business, get a patent out the door, license their technology or their product, do something with it, that end stage. And so to answer that question of what do I do with this idea, we are creating a one-stop shop. So there's a group, some of you have heard of Research Triangle Institute, I'm sure, out in Jersey, and they have developed something called the RTI iCanvas Matrix. And so what is that? So I have a very rough, it's actually much more attractive online, but needless to say, this is an electronic database. And what they've done is they created a matrix from kind of start to finish, from all of the bits and pieces that are necessary in order to get your idea out of the lab and out the door, right? And so broken it down into team status, technology readiness, development resources, intellectual property, business strategy, and market fit. And there's actually like 9 rows on this whole matrix. What's cool about it is as you check off these boxes, you click, they turn yellow, and you get from 0 to 100, you get 100%, you get this readiness score to say, hey, I'm ready or I'm not ready, okay? What we're doing, though, is recognizing both from the literature and our awesome colleagues here within the CCTSI region, what we know is that not everybody knows what to do, right? So what we're doing, we have licensed this particular package from RTI. We are in process now of getting it up here at CU, and we are going to be doing a massive overhaul. And so basically the first things that we're doing, there will be 2 new buttons added to every square. The first button is going to be like a little question mark. And when you click on it, it's going to tell you what this means. So for example, there are some people that don't know what the words intellectual property mean. So there will be a simple language definition for these business terms so that you can begin to understand what someone's talking about. If you're going to go have a meeting with some money guy, you at least want to know what this means. The second button, perhaps even more importantly, will be a link to all of the places and resources that are available to you as an inventor, an innovator, an entrepreneur that are tied together within the CCTSI ecosystem. And this ecosystem is regional. It's not just here on one campus. So if there's an event or an activity or a training that's going on in Fort Collins at CSU, you'll be able to link to that. So everyone will be able to find the resources they need and the places they need to go next to take care of whatever's in that little box. And the idea is, in essence, a one-stop shop for all of you to have access to the tools you need to be successful. And we think, knowledge is power. We all know that. And so this is a way for everyone to have access to that information. Okay. Any questions or concerns at this point? Okay. So the other thing that we're doing, and this is one, Dr. Demetria McNeil is my partner in crime on this. We offer the CTSA NIH I-Corps training 3 times a year. So what is that and what does it mean if you haven't heard of it? This was a program, it's a dual program sponsored by the National Science Foundation and then the National Institutes of Health. So National Science Foundation actually started I-Corps. And the bottom line is this is that early stage discovery training. It's a 3-week training that we offer here. And there are 2 full days. And so if you have an idea of something you think maybe you have an idea that you'd like to commercialize in some way so that you can impact patient healthcare and health outcomes, you would bring your team, come to our training. The first 2 days are 2 full days where you learn all kinds of new words, things like value proposition, for example. You learn the language, the early stage language of business. You also learn things like how to interview people. And what we do is in this 3-week window, we ask you to go out and do 25 interviews of potential customers, people who might be in the orbit of the product idea that you have, so that you can discover for yourself what other people think of your idea and what aspects of it are working and what perhaps isn't working so well. And then at the end of the 3rd week, you come back for another day where we just throw a million resources at you. And we also have you do a presentation to tell us what you learned from this process. And it's much more intensive than I'm explaining in the time we have today. But the point is, you have that opportunity to figure out, is this idea really worth going to the next level? And you have a choice at the end of the 3 weeks. 1 is go, so you take it to the next level. 2 is no go. Nope, this is not such a good idea after all. And 3 is pivot. Maybe you make a change. Maybe there was enough information that you received that has caused you to rethink how you would want your product to go. The idea behind this is to really help you through that first phase. This is all at no cost to you. It is a cost of time, certainly, and we require that you bring your team with you. So more than one person has to attend, right? To date, we actually just completed another cohort that I don't have in here. We've had over 82 teams, and we've had, about 240 plus people that have attended to go through our training. What's also nice about this is if you finish the training and you do really well, you're also qualified to go to the national level. And if you're awarded that, that's a $50,000 chunk of funding to help you. And then you go to the nationals and you do 100 interviews. The point of this is refining, and getting your idea to the point so that you have a much better probability of being successful with your idea. Okay. So, what else can we do for you? Well, one of the things that we will be launching at the latest spring semester of next year, so sometime after January, are what we call Entrepreneurial Studios. There are 2. I'm going to talk about Entrepreneurial Studio 1 first. And so the idea behind these Entrepreneurial Studios are to help, again, remove barriers to clinical translation by providing you with a suite of resources to support, in this case, early stage innovators. So you have a great idea, you've gone through I-Corps perhaps, you're ready to talk to some people to figure out what to do next. And so if you go to the RTI One-Stop Shop iCanvas, it's going to direct you to think about the Entrepreneurial Studios. And Entrepreneurial Studio 1 will have a grouping of expert, scientific, and industry leaders to advise early stage entrepreneurs. So the idea is, much like our research studios that we offer now, you'll be able to provide information on your idea, where you're at, what you've accomplished to date, and then you can devise the series of questions you really would like answers to. And these get submitted to our esteemed panel of experts, and then you'll be invited in for a 2-hour meeting where you'll present your idea, your concept, and then you will have these experts there ready to coach you and to help you to the next step. So that will be Entrepreneurial Studio 1. Okay, well, then specific aim 2, again, this is that mid-discovery stage to commercial launch innovators. And we have Entrepreneurial Studio 2. This is for folks who've been through 1, or maybe they're far enough along that they're ready for more intensive business advice, strategic advice, things of that nature. You're kind of past the early stage nuts and bolts when you get to the mid stage. And again, we'll have a curated group of industry experts and academic entrepreneurs who have been through this process themselves, who can answer questions. Same process as Studio 1. You'll be required to present your project and all the work you've done to date. And then you'll be encouraged to submit as many questions as you might have for this esteemed group colleagues who, again, at no charge, are going to be willing to coach you. What's also cool about this is we'll be collaborating not only with CU Innovations, our tech transfer office, but we'll also help facilitate applications for additional funding. It might be our NIH funded Spark Reach program, Gates Grubstake, DigiSpark. There's a Chancellor's Discovery and Innovation Fund. Bottom line is, if your idea is pretty solid and you're at this stage and ready to go, then we're going to help you get to that next level, right? Because we want you to be successful. And then we also have access to external resources for any of these things that we're doing. We also have external resources. So it might be the Small Business Administration, and that's one that Demetria in particular is a real pro on. We have the Rockies Venture Club and other resources that are out there that might be the next step for that valley of death where the funding issue becomes a problem. So Entrepreneurial Studio 1 and I-Corps kind of gets you through that first phase where most academics wilt. And this Entrepreneurial Studio 2 will get you through that second valley of death. The other thing that I love about this project is that we are curating, as we speak, what we're calling, it's a database that's called the Management in Waiting. And here's the reality. Very few academic scientists or researchers really have the skill set to be a CEO or a business development person. You know, very few of us have at least an MBA. It's tough, right? And so this Management in Waiting is a curated database of people here locally who really love the startup culture. They love the startup industry writ large. They've probably been through multiple startups, and they're there to help with that business, the practical, okay, so you really are going to start a business, or you want to get this out the door in some way. And these folks will be available that you can interview and perhaps hire for your program or your project. Okay. And finally, specific aim 3, and this is where I circle back around to women and people from underrepresented groups. And that is, we are creating local affinity groups, and there will be 2 sets. One is to support primarily women, and the second to support those from underrepresented groups. And the idea is, and I'll stop there for a second and talk about that. So Dr. Ann Adama, who is an ER doc at Children's Hospital, is going to help with the women's group. We'll also be working with Dr. Regina Richards and Dr. Laura Borgelt from the Chancellor's Office to support anyone who's really interested. The idea is to create groups that are available to potential entrepreneurs and existing entrepreneurs to meet with like-minded people who might be struggling with exactly the same problem that you're struggling with. It may be, it's the notion of How do I write a business plan? Where do I go to get help? What happened when you did this? So we can create these affinity groups where we can commiserate. We can talk through all the barriers and issues that are important to being successful at this. The other charge to these two groups is for these groups to identify existing or additional barriers they are struggling with, and for these to rise to the level of the Chancellor's office, so that we can begin to implement any change that we might need. And for those of you that don't know Dr. Regina Richards, she is the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. And Dr. Borgelt is Strategic Innovations Director for Don Elliman, the Chancellor. So these two ladies are going to be available to listen and hear and learn from our group, our people, what we need in order to be more successful. So I'm very excited about this. And these groups are going to be as organic as we can make them. They will evolve as much as we can help them to evolve, with the idea that this is here again to help people be successful. And then finally, we are working with the Chancellor's office, Dr. Richards' office. Dr. Ann Libby is also leading this charge on behalf of a number of folks. The idea is to create an innovators promotion and tenure committee to develop, support, and implement matrix criteria to enable academic engagement in innovation activities. What does that mean? Remember that barrier I talked about at the very first slide for women and other underrepresented groups struggling to get through this because life happens? Well, the idea is we should be rewarding. We want the culture on this campus to be focused on innovation. We want it to be focused on really impacting healthcare and healthcare outcomes. And in order to do that, we need to think about rewarding people that are willing to engage in these activities. So this is a group that is already launching. And the idea is to figure out ways that we can support innovative activities with promotion and tenure. And so we want to remove that barrier where some of us have to choose between trying to get a really good idea out the door. And that's where a lot of innovation dies, when you have to make real world choices with what you're going to do for your career. So I'm excited about this and really can't wait to see it launch. Then finally, we've been doing this for a year now, and we will continue this. If you go to the CCTSI website, we have the second Monday of every month at lunchtime, we do something called Ask the Expert. And this is, frankly, in my opinion, much better than the traditional lunch and learns, or even having to listen to me here today. These are live interviews, and we have brought in some world-renowned experts, innovation experts, academic innovators, that kind of thing, industry leaders, and we interview them. It's a very open discussion where we talk about their successes, their failures, what they've learned over the years, and try to have kind of a provocative discussion that will enable the audience, and it's live, questions can be asked during the session, to really help people have that opportunity to learn from these experts that are out there. We are also we record the sessions, and then they are now uploaded as podcasts that you can listen to. And we're going to actually put them out. I forgot the name of the service, but we have a service set up where you can download these from the internet without having to go to the CCTSI website. That'll be available very soon. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're getting some really good responses to these Ask the Expert sessions. So please feel free to join us at any time. Okay, we've got just about 4 minutes or so left. So I wanted to make sure that we had time for any comments or questions. Please feel free to ask away. Yes, Roman.
How can we find information about the different studios and how to access them?
So the question was, how can we find out information about the different studios and how do we access them? Once these are up and running, again, this will probably be spring semester because we're curating all of our experts as we speak, literally. We will be doing a blast, of course, across the CCTSI infrastructure. I think somebody told me it was like 10 or 15,000 emails that this goes out to. It's huge. So you'll be seeing that. We will also be marketing this pretty broadly. So the idea will be that you'll have the opportunity to sign up and you'll go through an orientation process in advance so that you'll know exactly what the expectations are. And then we'll have hopefully the opportunity then to have all of your questions answered by people that have already been through this. So that's. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Right. Thank you guys so much. I know it's a beautiful day outside and I'm sure there are other things you'd rather be doing today. So thank you for coming and I hope to see you in person soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bodine, for a wonderful presentation. I think we have about 15 minutes or so before the poster sessions begin. Close out of this session. Thank you.